Mr. Karadzic, you denied the existence of these camps. You challenged journalists to produce first-hand accounts. You asked for photographic evidence. You've got it all now. Have you been lying about the existence of these camps?
We are in a war, and there is shortage of food, shortage of medicine, and shortage of luxury.
The conditions in that camp are clearly in contravention of Articles 3 and 4 of the Geneva Convention.
We will make investigation, and who was acting out of law and against the law is going to be punished.
I think these pictures will have an enormous effect because, not just because they've been on television, but because they provide evidence.
The camps of misery in Bosnia. Channel 4 News uncovers evidence that Serbs are ill-treating thousands of Bosnians. Good evening. For several weeks now, the Serbs have been hotly denying growing evidence of ill-treatment of civilians in detention camps in Bosnia. Tonight, Channel 4 News reports exclusively from 2 detention centres where the terrified Bosnian inmates clearly suffer from malnutrition, beatings and inhuman and degrading conditions. We'll be challenging the leader of Bosnia's Serbs to open the camps up to international inspection. ITN has gained exclusive access to the Serbian-run detention camps in Bosnia, which are at the centre of persistent allegations of torture and executions. In the last few days, there have been growing demands for international inspection of the camps. Human rights agencies fear that there may be slaughter on a huge scale. Channel 4 News' correspondent Ian Williams and ITN's Penny Marshall visited 2 camps in northern Bosnia. The first was a detention camp in a disused mine at Omarska. Here our crew was given only restricted access. They saw prisoners, some with shaven heads, who were emaciated and too terrified to talk. At the second detention camp, Trnopolje, men behind barbed wire told our reporter of beatings and executions, but they were too frightened of the consequences to speak openly on camera. The Serbians deny committing atrocities or running concentration camps. Indeed, they allege that it is Bosnian Serbs who are being detained and mistreated in 22 different locations. In this propaganda war, both sides are making appalling allegations. Ian Williams reports now on the evidence Channel 4 News has gathered from inside the Serbian camps.
These are the Muslim prisoners of Omarska. In small groups, under heavy Serbian guard, they are ushered into the canteen for their single meal of the day. Most have been here for 2 months. They say they don't know why, that they were rounded up from their homes. They were too frightened to talk about the way they have been treated and the conditions in which they have been kept. Conditions which have been hidden from the world, as the Serbs have denied access here to the United Nations and to the International Red Cross. Their prison is an old mining complex outside Banja Luka in northern Bosnia. In an office above the canteen, the camp commandant and a spokeswoman for the local Serbian authorities said they had 2,500 of what they called internees, who were being interrogated as possible Muslim fighters.
No, this is not the camp, this is the center, the transit center. Omarska and Trnopolje, both the centers, not camps.
The prisoners were being brought to the canteen from a large industrial building in the center of the mining complex. It too was under heavy guard, and we asked to be allowed to look inside. But in spite of promises of openness from the Serb-Bosnian leader, Dr. Karadzic, we were told we could see no more.
Why are you not fulfilling Dr. Karadzic's promise to us?
He promised us something else and said, you can do this and that and not that.
Our armed escort made it clear our visit was over.
We are now being asked to leave this camp, having seen nothing more than the canteen. We have been told that Dr. Karadzic's promise, while good to us, does not carry any weight here.
As we were moved on, Soldiers told us the army did not control the camp, which they said was run by the local authorities and militia. We had asked to be taken to a second camp at Trnopolje in the same area, to which several hundred prisoners from Omarska had that day been transferred, and which has also been at the center of allegations of atrocities. Conditions at this camp were appalling. In 100-degree heat, hundreds of men were forced to eat and sleep outside in a field, behind barbed wire. Their meager rations consist of a small hunk of bread and a bowl of soup every day. Here too, they said they had been rounded up, whole villages emptied of their men, and they were afraid.
Can you tell me anything about the conditions in which you are being kept here, or is it difficult?
I'm not sure that I'm allowed about that. You know, can you understand me?
People here being beaten?
Here? No. Here, no. Here.
But in other places?
I rather wouldn't talk about that. I'm not sure.
Can you tell us anything about the conditions that you were being kept in and the treatment of the people you were with?
Well, that was a hard time, what I can say.
We heard stories of people being beaten and people disappearing. Did that happen?
Well, I can't say much about that.
We just came here
From another camp?
from another camp, and we didn't know what's the condition here. We accept a little bit more better,
What was
like a breather.
What was it like before?
It was terrible.
One of the prisoners asked us to check on him in several days' time to see that he hadn't been punished for speaking to us. And away from the camera, there were allegations of routine beatings and executions. Several prisoners told us of retaliatory killings. One instance in which they claimed 150 of their fellow prisoners had been killed following the death of 10 Serbian soldiers in a Muslim village. We were told people had been beaten to death, and we were asked to smuggle a film out of the camp. The pictures show severe injuries, apparently as a result of beatings. In the makeshift medical center, there were cases of scabies, malnutrition and diarrhea. Local doctors said they were chronically short of medicine and drugs. Among them was a Muslim doctor. We asked him whether there had been any cases of beatings.
Ali imate slučaj da su bili neki koji su tučeni u drugom kampu, recimo podavedeni ovdje? Ima tako? Yes.
Many?
Da li ih ima mnogo ili...
On one side of the camp were refugees who were here simply because they have nowhere else to go, their homes having been destroyed. They have been told they can go as soon as they have a guarantee of a home outside Serb-controlled Bosnia. In Banja Luka, prisoners' wives have been queuing for days for news of their men and to register as refugees because they too have nowhere to go. On the roads to Banja Luka, Muslim villages lie empty and deserted, homes destroyed. If there is, eventually, freedom for the men in the detention centres, it's unlikely to be in Serb-controlled Bosnia. Ian Williams, ITN, Northern Bosnia.
Ian Williams reporting. His crew were cameraman James Nicholas, sound recordist Chris Hees and producer Andrew Bradell. And Ian Williams joins us now live. Ian, you were clearly supervised as you went round these camps, but how free were you to see exactly what you wanted?
We had very little freedom to see what we wanted in the areas that really raised concern. This is in northern Bosnia. In Omarska camp, we were shepherded very closely. We were kept under very close supervision. Guards stood over everybody we spoke to, and we were only allowed access to the canteen for a limited period with only a limited number of prisoners.
Beyond the camps you filmed in, how many camps altogether have you seen?
Well, we have seen over the course of the last week 7 alleged camps which were on the original Bosnian list of alleged concentration camps.
5 of these were in Serbia itself. Now, we are convinced, we are satisfied that these are not concentration camps. At most, they are refugee collection centres. The area that does give a matter of great concern is in northern Bosnia, in the area of Banja Luka, where clearly there have been beatings, there have been cases of severe mistreatment in camps to which the UN and to which the Red Cross are still not being given access.
So after your travels, are you in any doubt that atrocities are being carried out in some of these camps?
Well, there is 2 sets of evidence for that. I cannot say that I have first-hand evidence of atrocities. What I have seen in Omarska and the other camp in the Banja Luka area are clear cases of people who are being badly treated, who are being starved, who are being kept in appalling conditions. That, together with second-hand evidence from people who have spent time in these camps, which is so numerous and which coincides so much that it leaves one with a very strong impression that indeed there have been and there may still be atrocities being committed in these camps.
Now, one of the camps you tried to get inside, you weren't allowed to by the authorities there, even though Radovan Karadzic, the leader of the Bosnian Serbs, had given you permission to enter there. Does this lead you to believe that he is not in full control of the people that are running these camps?
I believe that could be the case. We were very impressed with the candour and the cooperation of Dr. Karadzic, whom we went to see in Palais near Sarajevo, and who offered us and appeared to give us every cooperation to see these camps. He even gave us an armed escort through northern Bosnia. Unfortunately, when we got into the areas where the camps were, the army themselves had to go and seek permission from the local authorities. Indeed, they said to us that the camps were not run by the army, they were not responsible for what was going on inside them, clearly alarmed that something was, and indeed that they had to get the permission of the local authorities and the local militia who were in charge of these camps.
Ian Williams, thank you very much indeed. Well, last week, the leader of Bosnia's Serbs, Radovan Karadzic, listed a number of Bosnian camps where he said Serbian civilians were being systematically tortured and killed. But he denied his forces were running concentration camps or ill-treating civilians. He invited journalists to go to the Serbian camps and see for themselves.
I invite any foreign correspondent to come to the Serbian part of Bosnia and Herzegovina and to point out what city or town they would like to search for concentration campuses for civilians.
Well, Mr. Karadzic joins us now live from Belgrade. Mr. Karadzic, you denied the existence of these camps. You challenged journalists to produce first-hand accounts. You asked for photographic evidence. You've got it all now. Have you been lying about the existence of these camps?
As a matter of fact, I am very grateful to British journalists that they came to Bosnia and Herzegovina and they have searched. I'm sorry that some disobedient people didn't allow them to see any corner, all of corners of this country. We are in war and there is shortage of food, shortage of medicine and shortage of luxury. I am glad that they have seen the worst prison in Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is Omarska. This is still prison for war prisoners, not for civilians.
Well, let's talk about the
innocent.
conditions in Omarska. People are being held clearly against their will. They're cowed, they're emaciated, they're terrified. And the photographs show clear, incontrovertible evidence of beatings.
It has to be investigated and people responsible for that would be punished. But as far as it is concerned with food, I have to tell you that all of people are in shortage of food in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So it's very difficult to obtain food since we didn't have a corridor to get food and since we don't have economy going on. But still, those people are war prisoners. I was in prison during communist regime, and I know that all of prisoners used to say that they are innocent. But still there was evidence over there in this bureau about fights, about their own participation in war.
But the conditions in that camp are clearly in contravention of Articles 3 and 4 of the Geneva Convention, which forbid causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health. What are you going to do about that?
I agree with you, and I'm grateful to British journalists, particularly they saw the worst of our prisons, and I am going to make my own investigation to find out
Well,
who
it's not
was
really good
responsible.
enough of you, Mr. Karadzic, to wash your hands of it. You said that you were going to let our journalists, our reporters in to see the conditions in those camps. They were unable to get in there. Presumably you don't control what's going on there.
I'm also going to find out who was this disobedient man who didn't allow them to go. I invite still all of those people again to be here or to be present here for a few weeks just to see how we are making, fixing those things. We didn't want to make something artificial for them. We just wanted them to see how things are, and we didn't prepare anything artificial for them.
Will you now say in front of us tonight that you will allow the International Red Cross and the United Nations unlimited, continuous and unannounced access to all the camps in Serbian territory?
Absolutely, yes. I would be grateful, first of all, to the International Committee of Red Cross to come there and to see how things are going on and to make some suggestions and to make some helps. I am seeking for peace, and in peace we could release all of those people, but still, until fights are going on, I am not sure that we can release war prisoners. We are ready to change them all for all, but Muslim side is not ready to accept it.
But the fact of the matter is, Mr. Karadzic, is that you seem to be making all these pious statements about letting just about anybody into these camps. But the fact of the matter is you can't deliver it, can you? Belgrade is in charge of these camps, not you.
No, no Belgrade. Belgrade has nothing to do with the Serbian part of Bosnia and Herzegovina. There are some disobedient people which are going to be punished. We have already...
And how are you going to punish them?
We will make investigation, and who was acting out of law and against the law is going to be punished.
Will these people be brought to public trial before the international community?
If it is necessary, that could be also done for international community, but this trial is going to be a regular trial and it would be public.
Radovan Karadzic, thank you very much indeed for joining us in Belgrade.
And please.
Well, the existence of detention camps inside Bosnia has again raised questions about the overall conduct of the war. As the reports of atrocities continue to grow, attention is now focusing on the crimes of war and how to punish them. The Geneva Conventions of 1949 define war crimes as grave breaches of the conditions of war. Under the Third Convention, which protects prisoners of war, these include the willful killing, torture or inhuman treatment of prisoners, and the causing of great suffering or serious injury to body or health. The Fourth Convention extends the same rights to civilians caught up in wars. What's more, it protects them from unlawful deportation, transfer or unlawful confinement.
A state in a conflict is entitled to detain members of the enemy's armed forces and to keep them in a proper prisoner of war camp. But in the case of civilians, there's no general right to round up enemy civilians in the way that one can round up enemy prisoners of war. Instead, a civilian should only be detained if there is a real security need to detain this particular individual. And then if they're detained, they're not criminals, they've done nothing wrong, and they're not to be treated as hostages either.
And as the Allies found when their prisoners were released after the Gulf War, it's difficult to pursue the individuals reportedly responsible for maltreating prisoners. 18 months after the conflict, the Allies have not been able to pin any specific charges on individuals in Baghdad. In the United States, President Bush has just announced moves towards establishing full diplomatic relations with the newly independent Bosnia and Herzegovina. And a short time ago, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee has just voted to press President Bush to call an emergency meeting of the United Nations to discuss military intervention in Bosnia. The presidential candidate, Bill Clinton, has also urged a tougher stand. He said military force may have to be used, adding you can't allow the mass extermination of people and just sit by and watch it happen. But others in the US say the initiative should come from Europe. Joining us now from Washington is Tom Lantos, a Democrat congressman who's on the House Foreign Relations Committee. Congressman Lantos, I don't know if you've seen our pictures or not, but when they are seen in the United States, will they
Yes, I have seen them.
Well, will those pictures move the United States closer to military intervention in Bosnia, do you think?
I very much hope so, that those horrendous pictures, which are reminiscent of the concentration camps that the Nazis had during World War II, minus the gas chambers, will stir public opinion both in Europe and in the United States. It's obvious that public opinion is way ahead of our leadership. Mr. Bush and his administration has to be dragged kicking and screaming into taking some action. A couple of days ago at a public hearing, I called for full diplomatic relations with Bosnia. 48 hours later, the president is following suit. It is self-evident that without united military intervention under United Nations auspices, led by the Europeans but participated in by the United States, the slaughter at Sarajevo and throughout Bosnia will continue. And it's unconscionable for the civilized world to allow this to happen.
Well, Congressman, you say the United States is dragging its feet on this issue, but
the administration
it certainly seems to be moving faster than the European community. From your perspective in the United States, this is in Europe's backyard, after all. Shouldn't the EC be taking the lead?
I couldn't agree with you more, and I think your Prime Minister has not covered himself with glory by offering one excuse after another. Margaret Thatcher spoke out forcefully and clearly, telling your people and our people, stop the excuses, save Bosnia now. We are at a moment in history when we are sorting out the Chamberlains and the Churchills of 1992, and so far there are very few Churchills on the European or on the American side.
What level of military intervention would you recommend?
I would recommend minimal intervention sufficient to create pain for the communist military leadership in Belgrade. That's the issue. This slaughter will continue. There are individual Bosnians and Croats and Serbs who are innocently being massacred. As a matter of fact, in Bosnia itself, about 8,500 civilians have been killed. This in American terms would be 250,000 people. Over 2 million Bosnians have been displaced. In terms of our population, this would be 100 million Americans driven out of their home for no reason whatsoever. The civilized world stood by during the early 1940s because it claimed, not quite honestly, that it didn't know what is going on. Well, we now know what is going on. It is on our television screen every night, yet the leadership is unwilling to move until public opinion forces leadership to move.
Now, there are much publicised differences between Bill Clinton and George Bush on this issue. Is it getting clouded by the race for the White House?
Governor Clinton has taken a courageous and forward-looking stance. He understands that neo-isolationism in 1992 will have exactly the same disastrous results that it did at Munich.
Congressman Lantos, thank you very much indeed in Washington for joining us.
My pleasure.
Tonight, Alain Peters, the representative of the United Nations High Commission for Refugees in New York, said that UN representatives had also visited Omarska camp.
Guards at a prison camp for former local officials in the town of Omarska boasted that they will not waste bullets on their detainees who have no food, water or shelter and who are beaten twice a day. They will starve like animals, one guard said.
Well, Britain, in its capacity as European Community President, has condemned the civilian camps in Bosnia as repulsive and despicable. The statement also called for the Serbs to allow international observers access to all their detention centres. Well, joining us now in the studio is the Foreign Office Minister, Baroness Chorka. Baroness Chorka, the British government isn't exactly covering itself in glory making these statements, but coming up with no action.
Well, before you can take any action, you do actually have to get access for the ICRC and for the UN into these camps. We've said they're appalling. As presidency of the community, we have taken action. We've taken action in the Security Council of the United Nations. The decision that now has to be addressed is what more can be done before going over the brink into what would be one of the bloodiest conflicts if we put people in. It is not the sort of territory that we experienced in Iraq when forcing Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait and back into Iraq. It is very, very different. And that is why all the military advice has been not unless it is totally unavoidable. It may be, but that is exactly why the United Nations Security Council must meet and discuss these things in greater detail.
Well, you mentioned Iraq there. It must sound strange to the Bosnians to hear from the government of John Major that there can be no intervention when he's the very same John Major who set up the safe enclaves for Kurds in Iraq.
Well, as the minister who was most concerned with getting food and medicine into those safe havens, the first thing I had to learn when wanting obviously to give humanitarian help in this situation was that I was dealing with a totally different mountainous territory, a number of different parties to the conflict, not an organised army, but a lot of rebel guerrillas fighting within their own groups, different groups issuing orders, whether from Belgrade or indeed within Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Well, let's get back to the chilling pictures from these camps. Isn't this situation a challenge to our humanity and more specifically to the will of the EC? And Britain is in the chair of the EC at the moment. We need a lead here, don't we?
There is no lack of will in the EC or in Britain. There must be immediate and unconditional access and continuous access, not only to the detention centres, but to the prisons, to the camps, and anywhere where people are gathered, whether they be civilians or whether they be prisoners taken, as the Serbs or others would say, in the course of war. But it is not simply that. It is also protecting, getting the food in. There are a whole range of issues which we have been addressing, and we intend, with the United Nations backing, to do all we can, not only to stop these appalling atrocities, but to bring the conflict to the end.
But hasn't it gone beyond humanitarian aid? We heard Congressman Lantos there saying we've reached a turning point, that it's time to sort out the Churchills from the Chamberlains. Do you go along with that in any sense?
I think that Congressman Lantos is not only saying what's in very many people's minds, but he is also a part of a campaign that's going on in the United States. Now, there is absolutely no doubt that when you consider anything as serious as this, and I do ask you to realise it's not just a question of stopping the atrocities in the camps, the detention centres and the prisons. We are at the moment on the brink of something very much more serious, and I repeat again, which would be one of the bloodiest conflicts. We must make sure, before we take the sort of action that congressmen and others recommend without knowing the full facts, we must make sure that we have them.
Finally, Baroness Chorka, very briefly, did you know about these camps before the pictures from ITN? We ran a clip there of Alain Peters from the UN in New York saying that they had access to Omarska camp. Did you have access to the information that they gleaned from there?
No, I had not seen anything until I saw the clip on the news just before 6 o'clock, and then what you showed rather more fully now.
Baroness Chorka, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now back to our main story. Channel 4 News has obtained access to the Serb-controlled detention camps in northern Bosnia, where it's alleged that torture and executions are taking place. Here at the camp of Omarska, groups of men under heavy guard are ushered in for their meagre daily meal. They were too terrified to talk to our reporter about their treatment or the conditions in which they were being held. At this second camp, Trnopolje, emaciated men were being kept in a field behind barbed wire. They were eating and sleeping outside despite temperatures of over 100 degrees. Conditions here were appalling. Some told us privately of atrocities, but others could not speak.
I'm not sure that I'm allowed about that. You know, can you understand me?
Away from the camera, our reporter was told that 150 men had been killed in retaliation for the deaths of Serbian soldiers nearby. On this programme earlier, the leader of the Bosnian Serbs, Radovan Karadzic, said anyone found guilty of atrocities would be punished. Well, we're joined now by our diplomatic editor, Nick Gowing. Nick, first of all, is it terribly self-indulgent to believe that our report will go any way to changing official EC policy on this issue?
Well, the fact is that television images during the last few months of the war in former Yugoslavia, and particularly in Sarajevo, have had an enormous effect on foreign policy making, not just in Britain, across Europe and in America. It was, in fact, the use of the pictures of the bombing of the bread shop queue a couple of months ago which suddenly galvanized American foreign policy. We've had the shots as well earlier this week of the cemetery and the funeral which was attacked. I think these pictures will have an enormous effect because, not just because they've been on television, but because they provide evidence, because foreign policy machines do not have the evidence themselves.
Do they not have access to information on the ground themselves?
They do not. Neither do the United Nations, neither do the Red Cross. They are trying to piece together, like we are, the story of what's going on. Sarajevo is one part of Bosnia, and a large part is simply not covered either by diplomats or certainly by journalists.
And what do you make of Radovan Karadzic's performance there, the leader of the Bosnian Serbs? He talks about punishing the disobedient people who are running those camps. Is he able to deliver on that?
Well, I don't know quite what he means, but it does raise a very important question. He has effectively said on Channel 4 News tonight that he does not control those areas in the north of Bosnia. Therefore, who does? Who are these disobedient people? I think there must, on the face of it, be clear and emerging evidence that probably Belgrade is having some considerable control on this area, as the Foreign Secretary, Mr. Hurd, seems to believe.
Nick Gowan, thank you very much indeed. And that's Channel 4 News. Good evening.